Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. Probably a dumb idea to film this video right after I finished drumming for about 40 minutes. Oh boy. Welcome back to my Stephen King novella ranking series, where I take a look at all of the novellas that Stephen King has written, and I rank them in terms of my overall enjoyment. For this episode, this is episode 4, and this is sort of the last installment of the novellas I would rank 30 through 21, which I'm deeming the meh tier. Like these are like decent novellas, but they're not anywhere near his best, right? Like these are decent novellas. Since today's episode is the last episode in the decent tier, I'm going to be discussing the novellas that I would rank, not wank. That's, oh dear, starting off terrific here. The novellas that I would rank 23, 22, and 21, and then either in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I will be doing the next tier. So the next tier of novellas will be the ones that I rank 20 through 11, and these are like the great novellas. These are terrific novellas, but they're not quite top 10 material. But even though they're not top 10, they are still stellar novellas, and I would recommend all of them. And these just missed the cut. And for today's episode, 2 of these are very surprising to me, because when I originally made my master list for my novella ranking, 2 of these novellas were originally way lower, either because I didn't remember liking them or just because I didn't remember them. But thankfully enough, I've been going back and I've been giving myself time to reread them. And upon a reread, they weren't like awesome, right? Because they're still in the 20s, so they're relatively low. But they're way better than I remembered them being. I originally had these way lower on the list, like in the high 20s and even the 30s. So these novellas did improve upon a reread, but I still have some slight issues with them. And then number 21, like, just missed the cut. I originally thought it would make it, but he has a lot of great novellas, y'all. Hence why I'm making this series. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So for number 23 on my list, we have a novella from the collection Skeleton Crew, which is going to be The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. I originally had this way lower on my list just for the main reason that I did not remember a thing about it. This was one of the very first collections that I read from Stephen King, so it has been quite a long time since I read it. So when I was doing my ranking, I was like, what is this even about? Like, I have to go back and read this, right? And so I went back and read it, and I kind of remembered a little bit about it, but most of it was like basically me reading it for the first time. I will say, before I get into like what it's about and kind of what I liked about it and what I didn't like about it, I will say that probably one of the main reasons why I enjoyed it more the second time is that I listened to the audio version of this, which is narrated by none other than Michael C. Hall, aka Dexter, which, if you don't know, Dexter is one of my all-time favorite shows. And just a side tangent, I'm super pumped that like the first episode of the new like reboot season was amazing. It was kind of everything that I wanted it to be, but that has nothing to do with this. But yeah, Michael C. Hall did narrate this, so I had a very good time with it. That said, it's not the best, and I'll tell you why. So for this novella, it does start off really well. And you basically are at this barbecue, and you have this editor and you have this writer and sort of some of their friends and family. They kind of have like a barbecue get together, and they're all kind of just standing around talking about this writer who was extremely good at his job. He's a very good writer, but he was also very delusional and paranoid about something. And I won't necessarily say what it is, because I think it's better going into it only knowing like the main premise. Like it's these people in a barbecue and they're talking about this writer and how kind of the crazy past he's had and everything that kind of leads up to it. And all of that beginning with like, it's basically just people talking and it's just dialogue and just getting the backstory of this writer. It was very well done. And I think this is like a 50-page novella. Probably like the first, I don't know, like the first half of it, I would say is very good. My problem with it is that it gets really stupid. Like the reveal of like what is actually happening and what the author is actually going through and what he's seeing. It's kind of dumb. But I'm sure people will enjoy it just because it is wonky Stephen King. So if you do like Stephen King getting real weird and just kind of dumb, it's not really scary. I wouldn't say it's very scary, but it is entertaining. And it's definitely better than from what I remember, which, to be honest, I didn't really remember that much about it. So, yeah, The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet is number 23. Pretty low on the list, but at the same time, it's a lot better than I originally thought it was. For number 22, it is found in the collection The Bazaar of Bad Dreams, which is his newest short story collection. And it is the story... I forgot to turn to the page. Crap. Hold that build up for 2 letters. You are, or your. I don't know. I had a very similar experience to this story that I had with The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. I remembered not liking this story the first time that I read it, and I read this when it first came out back in 2015, and it was kind of when I was not brand new, but I was fairly new to reading Stephen King, and I was so pumped for like a new Stephen King book, especially like a short story collection, because at that point I had already read Night Shift and really enjoyed it, so I was kind of hoping that this was going to be similar to that. Well, a lot of the stories in here are more on the literary side. They're not really... There is some horror, but it's more in the literary realm. So a lot of people did not like that. I certainly was not a huge fan of it when I first read it. And I did remember not liking You Are. But of course, I didn't really remember a lot about it since it's been about 6 years since I last read it. But again, just like The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet, it has such a tremendous start and such an interesting concept and premise. Basically, this guy is a teacher and he's kind of, trying to get his kids to read more. But everyone and their mom has been buying Kindles and they've been reading ebooks. And he's like, I like physical books, which of course I can relate to because I don't read Kindle. I like physical books. But the guy kind of, hones it in. He's like, I'll buy one, see what all the fuss is about. And he gets one, but it's a different, like, weird off-brand, it seems. But what he finds is that he's able to read books from parallel universes. So he's able to read stuff like in a universe where Edgar Allan Poe lived another 30 years of his life and wrote like several more stories and even novels, or like Ernest Hemingway writes this random story that's never been told by him. So, as a teacher, he's thrilled about this. Like, he can read stuff that, it doesn't exist in our world, but it exists in parallel worlds. And I thought that premise was amazing. And so I started reading this. I was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to put this way higher on the list now. But, of course, kind of a similar experience to Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. The ending in, like, the second half of it wasn't as good. It wasn't nearly as good as the first half. It goes in a different direction from what the original premise was, and I thought that kind of sucked. Like, I just wish he would have stuck with that and the theme of that, instead of going where I thought it was initially going, where this guy would be kind of enticed to take one of these stories and publish it as his own work. I thought that's where he was going to go down, and it was going to be like a discussion of like author ownership and plagiarism and all that kind of stuff, and just revisiting all of these different parallel worlds where like this writing exists. I wanted him to stick with that, but he went in a more like historical sense where like, oh, we need to like change the past and like all of these different historical events. And I'm just like, dude, why didn't you just stick with the original premise? And then the ending, you know, it's fine, but I really just wanted him to stick with his initial concept, but he didn't do that. But for that reason, for the first half of it, it's way higher than I originally had it. So it's at 22, or as originally I probably had it like number 30 or 29. It was very low on the list, but I was pleasantly surprised by it. And so it is number 22. You Are Your whatever, however you pronounce it. The last book I have to talk about today, the last book in my decent novella tier, number 21, is the first novella from 4 Past Midnight, which would be The Langoliers. Now, this might be unpopular because I can only assume that this is probably the most popular novella in this collection. I might be wrong about that, but I can only assume so. And originally, I even debated whether or not to include it on the novella ranking series. I mean, clearly it's in a novella collection, right? But if you look at how long it is, and I know this is arbitrary, but still, like, it's 234 pages with very tiny print. And if you go by the audiobook format, it's longer than some of his novels, like Carrie, Roadwork, Thinner. Like, it's basically a novel. But again, that's a little arbitrary. I decided to include it on here just for completionist's sake. But anyway, enough of that weird rant. What I was originally talking about is that I assumed that this would probably be the most popular novella in here. So probably people will, if they did like a novella ranking, they would probably put it way higher than I do. There is one more novella in here that I will talk about in a future episode, which I reread, and I quite liked it. I liked it a little bit more than The Langoliers. And while The Langoliers, it's not bad, obviously, but it's not terrific. It's kind of the definition of decent. Like, I'm not blown away by it, but I am entertained by it, at least. For anyone who doesn't know what this novella is about, it's basically about these group of people who kind of fell asleep on a plane together, and they wake up on the plane only to realize that most of the crew and most of the passengers have disappeared. And 10 people, I think it's 10, kind of awake, and they wake up on the plane. Grammar. And they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on, because obviously this is a crazy situation. Eventually, they land the plane, and they arrive at an airport where basically there's no people, there's no electricity, there's basically no signs of life anywhere. So that's kind of the main premise that I'll stick with, and I won't go further than that. But basically, they're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And it is I won't say very good, but it's a pretty good novella, although it's kind of a novel, right? It's got a decent cast of characters. They're not like spectacular. No one I would put in like my all-time favorite characters, but they're serviceable enough. And it goes in places that I wasn't expecting. Of course, I reread it, so I knew where it was going. But I remember just the first time reading it, I was perplexed as to like what exactly was going on, and kind of the reveal for what is happening. It's weird. It definitely goes in more of a sci-fi-y direction, and it's pretty good, I will say. And probably my favorite part of the novella is a risk that Stephen King took that I really did not think he was going to take. He kills off someone who, like, you're thinking, like, there's no way, like, he's going to kill this person off. But he totally does. And you're like, well, shit. And that was probably my favorite part because it actually shocked me the first time I read it. I was like, Jesus. So yeah, it's definitely got some solid writing and some solid characters and a solid premise. It's probably just lower on the list because I already knew what was going to happen. Nothing surprised me about it this time upon my reread. So probably just a little bit lower on the list for that reason. But it's still pretty good. And I would put it at number 21, which is the last book or novella in my decent novella tier. All right, so this concludes today's episode 4, where I ranked Stephen King's novellas 23, 22, and 21. And just as a quick recap, let's see. We got number 23, which was The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. Pretty decent. It's got a very good start to it, although the ending is kind of silly. But I highly recommend the audio if you're going to read this. Michael C. Hall does a fantastic job, and that's probably the main reason why it's so high on the list, honestly. A little biased there. And then number 22 from Bazaar of Bad Dreams, we have You Are, whatever. But again, it starts off very good. One of the coolest premises, honestly, that Stephen King has written, but it goes in a weird direction that I didn't like. I wish he would have just stuck with the original concept, but it was still a very good read, nonetheless. And then number 21, fairly popular Stephen King novella, The Langoliers. Might be an unpopular opinion. I don't know. Leave down in the comments whether you guys love this novella or not. I'd be very interested to see that. And yeah, The Langoliers is pretty solid, although upon a reread, I think I liked it slightly less. And of course, leave down in the comments below whether you guys love the novellas that I mentioned here, whether you thought they were okay, like I did, or whether you just hated them, or whether you're excited to read them, because I know a lot of people who are watching might not have read his novellas. So hopefully you guys are watching this series trying to learn a little bit more about these novellas and maybe try to find something, that you haven't read before that you're very interested in. And of course, if you do go out and read these, I'll be very interested to hear your opinions on them. So like I said, episode 5 will be coming out probably in 3 weeks, actually. I might do it in 2, but I think next Friday, usually I do Stephen King videos every Friday. But next Friday, November 19th, is my birthday. So I'm thinking I'm going to upload a video that I already pre-filmed, and it has to do with my birthday in some sort of fashion. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It's not really Stephen King related, but again, November 19th, which 19, it's funny because I was talking with Sarah from Sarah Reads about this. She's very jealous that my birthday happens to be 19, which is very important to Dark Tower lovers, if you are familiar with the Dark Tower. So yeah, November 19th is my birthday, and I will be releasing a video about my birthday that'll come up November 19th. And what I think I'm going to do is, since there's no Stephen King video that week, the following week, I think I'm going to post a random Stephen King related video. Maybe like a top 10 list. I'll have to think about which one I want to tackle. And then after that, I think we'll go back to the bi-weekly ranking novellas. And that'll be episode 5, which will be the very beginning of the second tier, which is the great novellas, where I'll be ranking his novellas 20 through 11. And I'm still in the process of rereading a lot of these novellas because, like I said, I haven't read a lot of these in a while. And I'm very glad that I gave myself time to go back and reread them. Because, like I said, with a couple of these novellas in this video even, in The Ballad of the Flexible Bullet. If I wouldn't have read these, they would have been a lot lower on the list. So very thankful that I did that. And yep, so that's probably the plan for the next 3 weeks or so, Stephen King wise, that is. So hopefully you guys will stick with me. Also, just some more housekeeping. If you guys are at all interested in joining the Bookish Drummer Discord, I'm, of course, running the Stephen King Short Story Book Club, where we're going and we're reading all of the short stories from Night Shift, his very first short story collection. And we're already having a lot of good discussions about the first 2 short stories, Jerusalem Slot and Graveyard Shift. You can still, not apply, but you can join the Bookish Drummer Discord anytime you want and just hop on in whatever time you want. The good thing about short stories is they're not canonical, so you can just kind of read whatever you want, basically. So you come join us whenever you want. And next week from, oh God, what are the dates? November 15th through November, oh God, what are the dates? Oh no, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah. So next week, November 15th through November 21st, we're actually going to be reading 2 short stories, Night Surf and I Am the Doorway. And they're short enough that we can read both of them, because Night Surf is like extremely short and then I Am the Doorway is fairly short. So we're going to read 2. And I'm hoping that we'll enjoy those. Night Surf, for if anyone's interested, it's actually connected to The Stand, which I'm sure a lot of people will be excited to hear that. And I Am the Doorway is one of my favorites in this collection. I'm not sure if it is my favorite or not, but it's definitely top 10, or maybe top 5, because top 10 out of 20, like what does that say? But yeah, hopefully, if you're at all interested in reading some classic Stephen King short stories, you guys will come join us on the Bookish Drummer Discord. And like I said, we've already been having a lot of great discussions, and people are bringing up stuff that I've never even thought of. Like for Jerusalem Slot, I've read that story 3 times, and people are bringing up stuff that I'd never even thought about. So a lot to unpack with these short stories. But anyway, what did you guys think of this video? Please let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. And again, if there's any novellas that you're interested in reading that I've mentioned so far on this series, or if there's any novellas that you picked up because of this series, please let me know what you thought about them. I'd be very interested to hear your opinions on them. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Bookish Drummer Discord. And if you're at all interested in further supporting me, come join our Patreon, or at least come and look at our Patreon page and see if anything interests you there. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a terrific day.